Hello.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this post-screening Q&A with our director, writer, and co-writer actor of the film, Irini Constantinidou and Robin King. And I'm really pleased that they can join us for the Human Film Festival. And thank you for staying around for this Q&A. I'm Jeffrey Geiger. I'm actually Irini's colleague at University of Essex. And what we're going to do here is I have a few questions I've actually prepared ahead of time for um, our lovely panel. And that will probably go on about 15, 20 minutes. But in the meantime, if you have any questions you want to pose to either Arini or Robin or both, you can just put those into the chat and they will come through while we're speaking. And then after about 15 or 20 minutes, we're going to move over towards questions from the general public. So I hope you enjoyed the screening. Irini, Robin, very kind of simple opening question. What was your inspiration for the story? Where did it come from?
Okay. The inspiration came while I was doing my PhD studies. So it was really research that was the foundation of the film. So I was analyzing various science fiction films so that they are dealing with the idea of memory and technology and how they affect our human identity. And as part of that, then I went into actually making Mnemophrenia. So it is a kind of a homage to many different science fiction films on the topic. And apart from that, it also has it deals with different ideas and theories that they are essentially discussing the idea of memory and its connection to identity. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Robin, what was your role in the writing? Where you had some fairly significant contribution.
Yeah, well, my contribution was kind of what didn't come up front because the whole story was Irini's to begin with. She had a very clear idea of the story she wanted to tell and kind of how she wanted to tell it, and she worked very closely with all the actors to improvise in workshops to create the scripts. So we weren't improvising on set, but we were improvising in workshops throughout, like 6 weeks or so of workshops before each part, and then all the scripts were not cobbled together, were compiled from the transcripts of those workshops. So I helped very much with the editing of those scripts and a few kind of key sections. I kind of contributed out of thin air, but the majority of it was from those workshops. So everyone was really contributing a lot, but it was all corralled together by mostly Irini and in part me.
And that's why our actors also have a co-writer credit as well. So because I wanted to credit them for all the work that they put on towards the script and their characters and the dialogues.
Yeah, it's interesting because the film doesn't necessarily have the feel of something that's been improvised. I mean, it has a very kind of clear plot, a very clear
Mhm.
narrative. So I know, Irene, as a director, you're also really interested in working through improvising scripts with the actors. I think you even have a system you've developed. Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Well, the system was based on my experience through the film. So um, essentially, because I'm working, because it's not exactly improvisation. It's not like many other directors, like possibly like Mike Lee. Although Mike Lee's technique is not complete, method is not completely in the open. but it's not that I'm putting my actors in a situation and I let them improvise on the spot and see how they are interacting with each other and dealing with the situation. However, my approach is very different because I already know the structure quite well. I know that I want to take them from A to B, and I direct them throughout um, while they are speaking. So I'm putting them in a specific situation. They know who they are and what they are doing. But I, throughout the workshop, let's say of the improvisation workshop, I was giving them post-it notes that so I wasn't stopping the session, but I was directing them. So I was giving specific notes to each individual, so they actually know only themselves where I want the story to go and how I want them to respond to what the other character might be giving them.
And
So I don't
that's
know if you
yeah,
want
that's
to.
well, that's a really fun way for an actor to work, because it becomes like a game. Because I know what I know, but I don't, and I know that notes are being given to my co-cast, and um, that those are the kind of acting exercises that in drama school are always actors' favorites, because it's kind of a game of working out what the other person knows, or you have something that you know will come out, but finding the route through to giving that out, that kind of story exposition out in a non-expositional way, that in a way that's organic to the character in the moment, is really fun, and that adds that kind of dynamic that an actor can bring to it, which then gives the flavor to the script. So the kind of the content comes from the Irini, but the flavor kind of comes from the dynamism of the exercise itself.
Yeah, because part of the characters, I didn't really know who exactly the characters were. So I knew what I wanted them to do and be and what part they were playing in the film, but I didn't know what was their backstory, who are they as human beings. And that is what the actors brought. They made them three-dimensional. So they created all the backstories and everything. If if they had siblings or not, what was their favorite color or whatever. So these are things that came out through the improvisation, and that's why I had most of my actors. What they enjoyed the most is that when they came on set, because we had a script, so they didn't improvise on set. They actually had a script, dialogues, and everything. Is that they already knew who they were, so there was not a lot of time we needed to spend on set for them to work on their intentions or what was behind any kind of given direction, because they already knew who they were and why they were dealing in the situation the way they were doing. So, and they were referring to each other many times in character. I don't know from your experience when we're working with the actors, with your cast members.
Yeah, for any actor working with a cast for any length of time, you begin to forget the actor's name and start calling them by their character's name, which sort of seems fitting with the subject matter.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to hear you talk about that collaborative process, because the one thing, well, one of the significant elements of the film is that obviously took a lot of research to get the scientific details right and get the historical details. And I'm, if you're working so closely with actors and yet you have so much that you have to get right in terms of detail, in terms of kind of particularly scientific or technological detail. I mean, it's a very human story. It's a very emotional story. It's not, a kind of tech fantasy. On the other hand, you do have to get those details right. So how did you work around the actors in terms of making sure that things didn't go off kind of in the wrong direction?
Yeah. Well, first of all, because I made the film in parts, so it was like there are three sections, three stories, and the first story, which is about Jeanette, that is making a documentary film. So during that part, which is the first one that I filmed, I interviewed a lot of scientists and theorists and experts in the field, because the original idea is that they would be part of the film themselves as well. So they were essentially acting as themselves, but they were pretending that they were in the future. So where mnemophrenia was already a condition, and then they were genuinely giving their own opinion on the condition, and based on their research and their expertise, they were giving specific answers to my questions. So a lot of the technology and the science behind it was given by neuroscientists and VR experts and psychologists on the matter. So they were actually helping me build my hypothesis of how the technology might be working and everything. But all these details my actors didn't necessarily know, because it would be too much for them. So I knew it, so I could then direct them accordingly on the improvisation. So if they were going to a place where it wasn't working, then I was direct them elsewhere. So, for example, I have a character in the film that, in the first part, in the group therapy session, of a character that he's cheating on his wife, first with VR and then in real life as well. So, and at some point in one of the workshops, he wanted to take the story somewhere else. So he kind of implied that he might have killed his wife or something. So there it was, yeah. So because they could go anywhere, so he wanted to make it more dramatic or something. So it was something that I had to direct him elsewhere, because it's not about that. So so where the story I wanted to take it.
And in terms of the technology as well, we were lucky to have Jamie, who played my colleague in the second part. He actually is a computer scientist,
and he's back
and he's back in computer science now. So he already had a lot of knowledge,
and he's doing a lot of research in haptic technology and about how essentially our bodily experience with technology and interactions.
And I'm a hobby programmer, so I know a little bit about the innards of computers, and so that we had some knowledge among the whole group. But as you said, it's kind of a human story. We didn't focus too heavily on the tech. So in that way, it empowered us to feel that we were equipped as actors to bring what we could in terms of raw human emotion and situational awareness without it's not like an episode of Casualty where you need to know, God, that ages me, doesn't it? Where you need to know, where you need, okay. Where you need to know all the terminology and you need to get the technical stuff right. We had a little bit of that, but mostly it was about how the human condition is and how a person behaves in a certain situation, and anyone can speak to that. So we felt equipped to bring what we could to it.
I'm not going to ask you how you got all the actors to correctly pronounce mnemophrenia, but
no, nobody was pronouncing it the same way.
Okay. So, Robin, your character Nicholas has mnemophrenia, and I was just curious, and is also kind of right in between two historical narratives. So obviously a very central kind of character, and someone upon whom some of the other characters sort of rotate around, I guess. So what did you do in terms of your performance to kind of both manifest and yet maybe normalize this condition, mnemophrenia? Was there anything in particular?
Well, the key word you said there is normalize. And I think, a more hyperbolic version of this film might have me having all kinds of tics and kind of little physical tricks to externalize the condition. But we wanted to show a world in which it was becoming more normal to behave like this. So it was surprising, actually, how little I had to do in that regard. And so, for one thing, referring back to sort of acting training again, I was able to draw on the experiences of being an actor and inhabiting different characters at any different moment. So when you're doing an improvisation exercise as an actor, you have to go with whatever you're given. The trick is to remain wide open to the possibility that anyone can say anything, and the cardinal sin in that forum is to say no. But you have to kind of adapt with whatever's going on and bring it into your world. So actually, all actors who have done these kind of exercises would have a little flavor of mnemophrenia anyway, because you're open to holding multiple possibilities in your head at once. But wider than that, I think, billions of people across the world have the ability to hold opposing views in their mind at any one time. And one example pops to mind. And I was watching a very religious person being interviewed, and the interviewer asked them, well, how would you answer the question, can God create a rock so heavy that he himself cannot lift it, which is a very classic kind of challenge posed to religious people. And he answered in really the only way he could, without kind of renouncing his faith there and then. He said, yes, he can, and he can lift it, which some viewers might see that and think that's just a semantic trickery. But for the person answering, he was very obviously completely sincere in that, and I have no doubt that he can simultaneously believe two opposing truths. And we all have that capability. And a memory, for example, is not an event. A memory is just a formation in the brain, a physical manifestation in the brain. And if you have two such manifestations in the brain, you can hold them in your brain, and you can kind of rotate from one to the other very easily. So it was not so much a question of trying to dig into, well, how would this affect my physicality, or how would I reconcile these things? It's more of a question of being open. And I think that was the kind of feeling overall, if I'm not mistaken, of the sense of the direction of time leading to an opening out in our brains, that we're like, the brains are like antennas that's kind of open to all possibilities as you go forward. And then the character in the third part, confusingly called Robin, but is just so open to possibilities that she can have any character inside her mind at any one time and can switch from them, between them at will. So it wasn't so much a technical exercise as more of a kind of empathic exercise. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, very thoroughly. Thank you. I'm just going to mention that if anyone has any questions you want to ask, you're very welcome to put them in the chat. I know, having done this myself, that YouTube asks you if you have a YouTube channel, but I think that you can also do it via Gmail. So if you do have any questions, by all means, just post those up and they'll come through, so I can read them out. I was going to ask, you mentioned earlier, Irini, that there were some gaps in the production, and that's a real challenge to, well, not just get the continuity right, but bring the actors back, and I mean everything you need to do. I was that, and another question, which as I was watching it, with an eye to directing or shooting, you have quite a lot of complex FX and graphics on the screen. And I was just wondering how you planned all the shooting process, the kind of blocking of the actors, the framing, were you doing it with this post-production in mind, or I don't know if you could just talk a little bit about that.
First of all, as you said, there were 3 different parts, and they were made they had very large gaps in between each part. So I was making, I didn't have to go back and ask the same actors, because each part was its own story. So I didn't have the issue that 5 years later that person might have different kind of hair or looking very, very different. So that was not the problem, because they were self-contained stories. However, I always had in mind that there would be, as you say, mentioned graphics, especially for the second and third part. And no, I didn't have the means at that point to film having in mind and block everything, having in mind how the graphics will look like exactly. So the only thing I had in mind while we were making the film and when I was storyboarding and preparing for it is that I knew that it would be an AI essentially recording everything, and that the AI wouldn't necessarily keep the 180-degree rule. It would be crossing the line. It would be just going anywhere. And so I was choosing shots that wouldn't necessarily be conventionally uh, allowed, let's say. So I could go wherever I wanted and whichever way I wanted, because uh, that's the whole point. Um, and so when we filmed with that director of photography, with Richard, we had that in mind, that we could be much more flexible, and we had much more room for experimentation of in the movements. As well, although the movement, we kind of knew that it had to be to feel more mechanic, so it didn't need to. It had to have like something more artificial, so not to be like so fluid. And then it was in post production when all those parts came together after I had filmed each different part, and we actually I didn't have a clue if they will actually work very well all together. In the end, they did, so I'm very thankful. And it was, I have to say, I always mention her name. It was because of Lauren O'Connell that did all the graphics. And I owe an enormous thank you to her because she worked for almost 4 years to do those graphics, and we had to work literally to create the UI, how it will look like, from the font to the everything, to the graphs and stuff. So it took us a very, very long time, and based on what we had to work on top of it. So essentially the graphics were created because of whatever material I already had shot. So
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it's not that visible. It really looks like it's all been completely planned out, the shooting and the post-production. We do have a question that's come through, and this actually relates to something I was wondering about as well, but I'll just read it as it's phrased. Do you reckon we're heading to Mnemophrenia right now?
as one of the neuroscientists that I had interviewed back in 2011, he actually said, because when I said, let's say that we have that kind of a technology, would Mnemophrenia would be part of it, part of our lives? And he said 100%. We just don't have that advanced technology. So I think we definitely have, we can see signs in ways, especially nowadays where we are so much into technology and with everything, even more so now. But due to COVID, we are stuck in our houses and we are interacting with everyone through technology, putting on top social media and everything else, and all the different interactions, technology interactions we are having. I think it becomes much more prevalent of us not being able to, we're starting confusing where reality stops and the virtual or online begins. So they are all becoming one thing. I just don't know. At the moment, we are, as I would imagine in my film, we are closer to the first part of the film where everybody's not that happy with what is happening to them. especially Jeanette, which was the main character of that story. I don't know if you want to add
Yeah,
to
well,
that. Yeah.
I mean, I think Mnemophrenia is more of an extrapolation of something like false memory syndrome, which
Mm-hmm.
already exists, is a phenomenon that is studied already, that happened even without the need for technological intervention. But then you add the kind of technology that we're going to have, like those of you who are watching, if you've tried VR, it is so immersive, even though the graphics are crude at the moment. When they become hyper real, it's difficult to take off the headset after an hour or two of that and not have a little kind of cognitive dissonance of what's real, what's physically real, what's not. And then you add to that the kind of information siloing we're seeing within the social media algorithms, the fact that people, that we have terminologies like alternative facts and I have my own truth. And so there are kind of political ramifications of it, as well as technological ramifications
And social and
yeah.
cultural.
So I think we are in a very interesting moment that intersects with the Mnemophrenia quite well. Our story just takes it in one particular direction, but it could go in any number of directions. But I have no doubt that we're going to see something of it.
And I think maybe the silver lining of the film having taken so long to finish, because originally, as I said, it started in 2011 and it finished eventually and was finished 2018 and released 2019, is that actually the film now speaks more to today's society than it was talking back in 2011. So actually it is much more topical now, and it has many more connections to our everyday life. So in a way, I think it was a good way. There is the fact that that happened to the film. Yeah, the timing.
I won't ask if you can predict the future.
But I wish.
No. Well, the other way of reading that question is: are we experiencing Mnemophrenia right now, or right now, in this moment, in this kind of podcast? Who knows? Maybe this is all an illusion.
Yeah.
Oh God, don't say that.
We have another question.
Yeah.
We have another question, but I can only see 2 lines, so I wonder if in the control room you can give me the top of the question again. No, there were 2 lines that I saw first, and then these lines came up. All right, I'll try and anyway. It's for Irene, and it's about the process of collaborating and working with various actors and crew. I'm sorry, Monica, who wrote the question, if that's not exactly how you phrased it, because I can only see the bottom part of it. But it's basically how you work as a collaborator, and how have you discovered members of your team, and how do you keep your relationship with the members of your team strong?
Okay. I found all my cast and crew through, the normal way that you will do through the industry in websites and stuff, where you are posting ads for either crew members and for casting calls. So, I had to see quite a lot of actors in order to get to the actors that in the end went into the film. So, and they had to go through 2 auditions as well, because I needed to have actors that had very strong improvisational skills for obvious reasons. The thing that I believe, first of all, with my actors, it was important what really kept them going. And I think it was because they really enjoyed the process, that they were part of it, and it was very organic. And so they really felt valued and that they contributed. So they were not there for a couple of days and that's it, and with no prep, no rehearsal. They had quite a lot of rehearsal time, actually, at the end of the day, which is not easy to have, especially with a no budget film. And for my crew members, what I was always trying to find is people that they really had, they could see the passion that I had for the film, and they really were very happy to engage with that and contribute to that and flourish. Um, so I think I was lucky because it is always a matter of luck. And I was I worked with very, very talented people that they all really put something into the process. And it really helped the film to go to the level, to a different level.
Yeah, I mean, it's an irony that you can actually, I mean, because there was no money involved, it's tempting to think, well, we can only get people for a very short amount of time. But because of that, actors are very often decrying, and crew as well, but I mean, I can speak as an actor. We want more rehearsal time. We want to inhabit the role a bit more and not just come along almost like a kind of day player. And where do I stand? Okay, where are my lines? Yeah, okay, good, off to the next thing. So people were very willing, because they could see, even from the audition, the audition itself was quite a long process of improvisation games, and everyone who came were really well, they said they really enjoyed the process of even just the audition itself. And so they taking that into a long rehearsal process meant that, yeah, you had a really kind of committed troupe of people who really wanted to see the process through and really inhabit the role. It was kind of like a play instead of a film for a lot of people.
And for the crew members, I think it's also because they could see that I had a very specific plan. So even though it was a no budget film, that I really had a very strong vision on what I really wanted for the film. So it wasn't like I was trying to figure things out while we were making it, but I already came with a specific plan and ideas, and I just wanted them to help me implement them.
And some good home cooking goes a long way on a set.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, you have to feed your actors. Definitely. Absolutely. Andreas has put in a question. They would like to know, have you been inspired by any movies or shows in particular? What are your favorite books of the genre? I guess that's science fiction. Are you interested in Carl Sagan? I don't know if you know Carl Sagan and Cosmos, an astronomer from Cornell. So anyway, that's the question.
So, I mean, I have been inspired, as I said at the start, from many films, because originally my PhD research was based on theories. So I was, and I had to watch and analyze different films. So, I mean, part of the films that inspired me were from Total Recall to the original, to Johnny Mnemonic in different ways, to
13th
Floor, and there's so many as well. I mean, even like Eternal Sunshine that that I'm teaching and I like is because of the whole idea of memory and identity, which is not exactly a hard core sci-fi.
Strange Days,
of course.
And
so they are all the different kind of variety of films that they have dealt of losing the boundaries between reality and fiction because of technology and how that affects us. And in some ways, even kind of Robocop, even which is the idea of identity and how he's enmeshed with technology. And
that informed also the graphics as well, because you see
Robocop definitely, but it's not the original. Robocop in the original inspired me for the ideas, but the remake helped us base quite a lot of our graphics. We got inspired from it.
The idea that the graphics actually tell a kind of sub layer of the story, so you're getting part of the subtext of what's going on the people by seeing what the biometrics are showing.
As for books in general, that is because it was mostly films that inspired me. So it wasn't like a specific book, like science fiction book. Because so I wouldn't say for that specific film that it was one book in particular. That and I have been asked these questions again, like who is my favorite director, what is my favorite book. Unfortunately, I'm not the one of the people that like to make lists of favorite. I mean, Robin, I think, enjoys it much more than me, so I cannot on the spot tell you what is my favorite book or director or the film that inspired me the most. But as I was saying in a recent interview that I was asked that question, I recently read 1984 again, and a year ago or so, and I really believe that it was amazingly topical for what is happening today with fake news and everything. So I would say that definitely, as science fiction film books go, that is definitely a seminal book for me and many other people, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, for me, watching the film, I couldn't help thinking of Tarkovsky's um, Solaris,
Solaris.
and so not the George Clooney remake, but
Yeah, no, no.
Tarkovsky's, just sort of in the pace and in the look of the
Hmm.
film.
Yeah.
And Claire Denis has also done a bit of sci-fi. She did a film called Mile High a couple of years ago, and that
Mm.
also has that odd, I shouldn't say odd, but quite sort of striking mixture of kind of realism and emotion, and then also being in the realm of fantasy and science fiction. But I mean, as you said, we're getting closer and closer to that,
Mm.
it seems. We have
Mm.
a question from Nellie. Nellie is asking, do you see the movie as a warning of the overuse of technology or this kind of technology?
Mm. Um, I suppose, as with everything, the overuse is not a good thing. So exceeding the how much you're using of anything and abusing it, it's not good. Um, so it's not. I don't believe what I'm trying to say with the film is like with anything new, like nowadays. Now, as we already kind of mentioned in relation to the use of social media and what is creating, is that we are going through that route where when you are essentially it's something very new and you are going full on in it without any kind of awareness or you don't even have a clue yet of the possible consequences of it. You learn about that a decade later or 20 years later, where you now know and you become more wise on how you have to interact with it and how you use it in your everyday life. I think with virtual reality, definitely we will go through a stage when virtual reality gets even more advanced and it becomes much more prominent and used much more from everyday people. There will be a time where there will be a lot of issues and quite a detachment from reality.
But I mean, in some ways, I'm not sure that that's what this film is
No.
trying to say.
No,
I think there will be issues.
yeah. But
You,
that is the first story of the film, and then I'm showing the
yeah, I
progression.
think that's the whole thing. That the three stories present kind of three different viewpoints on where the technology might go: pessimistic or optimistic, or somewhere in the middle, or somewhere you could never imagine it. Like there's a recurrent kind of theme in a lot of sci-fi films, which is overarchingly pessimistic about technology. It's always about how technology corrupts the human, and the human spirit has to reclaim its dominant position over technology. But if we look at what technology has done for us throughout the millennia, it's given us as much, if not more, than it's taken from us. I mean, you can split an atom and obliterate a city, or split an atom and power a city. And the same with any kind of technology we have. We could use this virtual reality to.
I mean, fire is a technology.
Yeah, clothing is a technology, and all of these things are technologies.
So I mean, we cannot survive without
that.
Yeah, or electricity and everything else.
I think the overuse is the operative word there. There are many people who overuse this technology and use it too early in life, and there are going to be problems with addiction for sure with VR, even more than there are with smartphones, I think, because it's just so alluring being in that world. I have a VR headset, and when I get a chance to use it, I'm in there, and I don't want to come out because it's just like being in a dream, and it's.
And that is still without being at all as realistic as I presented in the film.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm an adult, so you imagine when we have child VR headsets that are able to be worn by a 3-year-old, when they turn 20, I think they will have. I don't want to be too down on it. I mean, they will have a very different experience of life than our generation. They'll have a lot of addiction issues for sure, but they will also open up so many possibilities for themselves that we couldn't dream of.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they were calling the Avatar syndrome at one point, when people were going back to that film over and over and over, and they couldn't adjust to being outside of that world. We've got one more question, and this might be our last question, because I see the time is getting up on 9 p.m. So if you were to make a movie now, Irene, are you still working on tech-related topics? What are your future plans? Anything you want to share?
No, I mean, the next film that we are working on at the moment is completely different from Mnemophrenia. It's definitely not tech-related. It's, I don't want to say too much yet because it hasn't been, we haven't finished the film, the script, but we are working on the script with Robin at the moment. So, I mean, I passed it on to him for
me to stamp all over it.
Yes. But it is generally till now I have worked much more in with ensemble stories, so like that there are a lot of different characters that they're coming together and creating one story. But the new one will be very different because it's all based on one female character, so it revolves, the whole story revolves around her. And the one thing that I can say about the film is that it is the same way as with Mnemophrenia, that I want to challenge the audience and ask questions, and it's more about project their own ideas on the film and what they believe, if what I'm showing is good or bad. So I don't want to be pedantic and didactic of, no, that's the way things will be, but it's more, I leave it open to the audience to decide whether it's a good or bad thing. The same thing I want to do with the next one, where it is more like, again, questioning and challenging specific perceptions, but that have to do much more with female identity and the idea of motherhood. So it's I don't think could be more different from the.
But we do often talk about where Mnemophrenia could be taken future. We were at one point working on an outline for a prequel for it,
which I would love to be. If I manage to make the second film, I would love the prequel of Mnemophrenia to be the third film. So, which will be a very different. Again,
it is a universe that lends itself to multiple storylines. So yeah, I think it's not something that will go away now. I think it will come back.
But I would want a budget for it.
Yeah,
big budget.
Yes. Not too big. It'll swell your head.
No. But a budget.
Just biggish. Yeah, big enough.
Yes.
Well, one final very quick question. I think I don't know how you're going to answer this. Do androids in fact dream of electric sheep?
Yes, and they remember them wholesale.
Maybe that's a good way to end.
I think so. So
Yes, and they remember them. Absolutely.
Wholesale.
yes, I think so. Do you want to answer?
Anything?
I gave my glib joke.
And for it was an inside joke for the no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
anything either of you want to close with?
no, I don't know.
No, I mean it's interesting kind of revisiting this in our heads, isn't it? Because it's been such a long process for especially for Uni, but for both of us. And there's been some time since it was last finished. It was finally finished, and each time we have a screening like this and a Q&A, new things occur to us about it, and we get new questions that take it in different directions. So it's interesting how I think it will speak to different generations, and it's providing an interesting journey post haste.
Which it is good that as I said, that it depends on the time I was discussing the film. Like a couple of years ago, the questions were very different. Like when we first presented it, for example, a year and a half ago in Boston, where we had our premiere, the questions were quite different that we got from the audience than what we are getting now. So they are changing, and the interest and the context that the people put it in is different. It's very interesting to see that it speaks to actually subject matters I didn't think of originally. So yeah, it is good.
Well, that's great. And thank you everyone for your questions and for your attentive viewing in this rather distracted environment we have of looking at screens and multiple screens. Thank you so much, Irene and Robin, for doing this Q&A
No, thank you.
well into the wee hours of the evening. So I think that's it from I think that's it from us. So I just want to thank everyone again so much on behalf of University of Essex and the Being Human Festival. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.